And in three, two, one. Hello and welcome to another episode of Guide to the Grind. My name is Jeff Eady. Joining me, as always, one of my closest friends, one of Canada's favorite mortgage brokers, and the Simon to my Garfunkel, Mr. Jonathan Tilger. Jonathan, how are you today?
Let's see, if I'm the Simon or the Garfunkel, that makes me the talented one, and you provide the harmony. Is that correct?
Moving on. Before we get started here, Jonathan, I just want to say to you listening, if you could like, share, subscribe, comment, all those things really help get the message out there, and we really appreciate it. I'm excited for our guest today, Jonathan. Something a little different than we normally do, but very much in line with our values and the way we see the world. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the conversation. He's a visionary CEO committed to revolutionizing charitable giving in Canada. Founder of Charitable Impact, an innovative giving platform that has facilitated $1.2 billion in donations, he disrupts the norm, pushing for enhanced access, education, and open dialogue around the state of Canada's charitable sector. Please welcome to the show, Mr. John Bromley. John, how are you today?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for having me. And hey,
Uh,
Simon and Garfunkel, that's not couldn't be paired with two lesser people. It's great.
Sad thing is, Jonathan has the better hair for it. Um,
Uh,
so thank you so much for being on the show. Love the fact that you're Canadian. We don't get a lot of Canadian guests. Not that there aren't a ton of interesting people out there, just the people that send us guests usually are from the US. So, are you located in Toronto?
no, I'm in Vancouver actually.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
there is another part of the world other than Toronto, isn't there?
Yeah, well, not everyone knows that, but yeah, Vancouver's the place with the mountains and the ocean.
Oh, okay. I didn't guess that because I saw sunshine in the back picture. So
Yeah, well, that's because it's a picture. Yeah,
So
yeah.
thanks so much for being on the show, John. I'm super excited about this conversation. Charity is something that's very dear to me, giving back, all of those things, and I really want to know more about what Charitable Impact does, and if you can just kind of sum all that up, and we'll dig a little deeper once you do that.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you're a donor, if charity is valuable to you, if that's something that you choose to participate in, with your life, one of the questions we asked before we started Charitable Impact was, well, who works for you? As the donor, like where do you go to get, objective, ideally, advice that's tailored to you to help you with your giving journey, right? And Canadians are a generous group, but they don't all give to the same charity. So Charitable Impact was designed to work for the donor, for the person who gives away their time or their talent or their money, regardless of what charities they care about giving to, and regardless of how much they give. So we act for the donor, and we provide them a giving account. So they put their money in there first. They get the tax seat right away, and they can hold that money and they can send it out to any registered charity of their choice. In that way, we kind of act like a bank, right? We're not a bank, but we kind of act like the experience of a bank, where we really serve you regardless of what you choose to do with your money, as long as it's, charitable at law.
So with that, would you go through and help, I guess, provide information on different charities that are aligned with somebody's with, I guess, the causes they'd want to support? Is that part of what you would do in that process?
Well, we provide both a tool and support services. So we have people you could reach out to and talk to and get some advice and some counsel on how to navigate the charity sector, right? Um, so we refer to that as philanthropic advisory. We do provide that service. We think it's really important because while so many of us are charitable, we don't, which is sort of natural, right? Being generous is natural. We don't all know how to navigate the charitable sector. So we think providing philanthropic advisory services is really important. The tool, however, is kind of like a online, bank account. So you add the money in there. That's where the charitable donation happens, and then from there you can distribute it to any registered charity in the country. So every single entity that's registered as a charity in Canada is in our system, and you can give it to any one of those that you like. So if you already know where you want to give, or know how to investigate charities and how to choose yourself, then go nuts and do it yourself. You can really, you don't need to reach out to us. It's an online web-based service that's built for you to, make it easy for you to manage and organize your giving. But if you do want some help, we got some people that are a lot nicer than me working with us.
I have so many questions. I'm not sure where to start, to be honest with you. I'm not playing devil's advocate here, but just because these questions come up, and I'm sure other people will think it, when somebody donates into your fund, it's a fund, correct?
Yes,
So when they deposit into the fund, that's when the write-off is immediately generated?
correct.
And so you guys act as a charity yourself?
Well, we don't act as a charity. We are a charity,
Okay.
or we are a charity and therefore we act as a charity. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So you're basically like an aggregator of other charities.
Yeah, we're what's referred to in Canada as a public foundation. So, and there's about 5,000 public foundations. This is a thing. It's to be differentiated from a private foundation, which, by the way, sometimes private, really wealthy families, sometimes companies, put together. We're a public foundation, and so when you or anyone gives us money, that's the donation at law. So you give it to us, you can't get it back. You can't. So that's why we're not like a real bank, right? It's not a deposit and then you can take it back and spend it on Twizzlers. You can give it to us, you get the tax receipt, and then from there you can distribute it. You can redistribute it to any registered charity once you're ready to do so. But if there's a time difference between like when you donate and when you allocate it to the organizations that you care about, then that's fine. And we actually think that's a good value to donors. Because, for example, it lets someone commit to being charitable by giving their money away, whether it's a budgeted decision or maybe December 31st is coming and they want the tax receipt before year end. And to commit to being charitable, make the actual donation, and then take the time, take some space, whatever they need to make good decisions about allocating that money to charities that they actually, are really interested in, right? And that they're willing to take responsibility for giving to. Right. And to juxtapose that against how most Canadians give, which is when they're asked, hey, do you want to give to this? Oh, okay, sure. And we end up with quite a reactive charitable sector. And there's nothing wrong with reacting necessarily to charitable asks. What happens over time, though, is when you kind of go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. Oh, I'm not really sure about that charity. I didn't even know who I was giving to, and my friend was doing that fundraising, and they're shaving their head for something, right? So our interest is helping the donor, give the way they're willing to take responsibility for, to really make it a part of their lifestyle, right? And not unlike, I guess, like online trying to buy stocks, right? You really want to sort of kind of commit to investing first, put your money away, save some money, and then sort of make decisions over time when you're ready to really choose the companies that you want to invest in. Charitable giving's not really different from that.
So how did you get into this, and I guess where'd you get the idea to come up with this type of framework to work from?
Well, my background's in corporate finance, and I worked there as a much younger professional, having graduated, with a commerce degree. For all you Canadians out there, I went to McGill in Montreal. Great place to go, fun city. A lot more fun than Vancouver, but not quite as beautiful. And after several years of doing that, I left the bank culture for my own reasons, and started, happenstancing and talking to my old man, my dad, who's still my dad today. And my dad was, or is, one of the pioneers of charity law in Canada. So I had this very normal dad who had a great relationship with, who had this weird kind of really niche job of knowing the charity sector, almost better than anyone else around. And when I started working with him, which was never really the family plan, I just sat down and sat in meetings and listened all the time, and got to the point where I knew a ton about charitable giving. And it became very clear to me, because we had a business that advised, philanthropists and helped people with the navigating the charitable sector, registering charities and things like that. It became very clear to me that a big barrier to donating was on the donor side. There wasn't really anywhere for donors to go to get advice. I mean, they could come and talk to us, but there wasn't anything scalable where donors could really get engaged to help them with their charitable giving. And combine that with the data that I think is pretty clear that, fundraising, which is a really important part of the charity sector, right? It's the sales and marketing arm of the sector. It's really, really important. Okay. But while it raises money for charities, particularly those charities that do it well and or spend a lot of money doing it, it hasn't really proven to create a culture of giving. So it sucks money out of you, which is good for the charities. The charity sector needs that money, but it hasn't really proven to increase the amount of participation in charitable giving. And the data on that is quite unfortunate. Over the last 10 years in Canada, the last 10, 15 years, more money has gone to the charitable sector, but it's been coming from fewer and fewer Canadians. And those fewer and fewer Canadians who are giving are actually giving less money themselves, right? So the only way the math works is that a few, very few, very, very large donors are giving away masses and masses of money. And the question is why, right? And part of our answer was that we just believed that there needed to be a user experience, that was built for donors to, really help them get engaged with their generosity, to nurture this nature that we have.
Okay. I have lots to say and lots to ask about this, because to me, I think charity is extremely important. I think everyone should tithe. I think it's a part of the law of reciprocity of the universe that if you give, you get back. You're absolutely right about there not being a culture of giving. I think, we're in very stressed times. A lot of people don't have enough money, or at least have a scarcity mentality around their money. What do you think could cause a shift in that for more folks to start a tithe monthly, or to get engaged with a way of giving back?
That's an awesome question. And if I can pick on the language, okay, the tithe is specific to Christian theology, right? And just by way of example, I'll get to my answer here in a sec. But people who practice religion in Canada, people who actually practice religion, donate 4 times more than people who don't. Okay, so the tithers amongst us donate 4 times more than the people who don't. So, why is that? And this is getting to the answer. Is that because religious people are more generous? Is it because they're nicer people? Is it because they care about their community more? Or is it because they're educated on giving, right? It's in the Bible. It's talked about, at church. It's modeled for them by the people they know, right? And then as a result of that, they're kind of meant to experience it themselves, right? And those 3 things are the 3 sort of pillars of learning. So the reason why I think more people don't participate in giving is because there's really nowhere to go to learn about charitable giving, right? And I actually mean like learn the stuff. I don't mean Canadians aren't generous. I mean there's nowhere really for people to go to learn about, what is a charity? How do I differentiate what I think a good charity is from a bad charity? How do I prioritize the causes that I think are important? How do I determine whether a charity is actually carrying out good work or not? What's a tax receipt and what value does it have to me, vis-a-vis my tax situation or my income level, right? Like these are all actually questions of both sort of financial literacy and community literacy. But the thing is that while there's a lot of sort of promotion of volunteerism and promotion of generosity in a place like Canada, there isn't any really place to sort of, learn about giving. And we thought that instead of sort of saying, hey, here's one cause and you should give to it, the way specific charities do and are meant to do, okay, I've got no problem with that. It's a really important thing. We thought it was really important to say, hey, here's a sort of a cause neutral environment where you can come and develop into your charitable self. And that's really what Charitable Impact it is, right? And we provide all the donation facility for the donors for several reasons, but the main one is just to take the complexity away. Hey, donate first. Put the money over there, just like a savings account, and then be thoughtful about how you spend it. In that context, we see people get more engaged with charitable giving over time. They take more personal responsibility for it. And in this way, something you probably know a lot more about than me, it's really analogous to financial literacy.
So
Oh, yeah. So go ahead, JT.
Yeah, the one thing I just wanted to, I guess, talk about here, and let's just reopen up the conversation. And this is when it comes to charity, one of the, I know, biggest concerns that a lot of people have, and for myself, one of my biggest concerns is, and it comes down to things you hear about, read about. You say, well, I donate $100, but reality is only like 5% of it or 10% of it actually goes to the cause. So much goes to, as you say, the sales process, the administrative process, all these other things. And and only 10% goes to what I'm actually putting the money towards. Is that part of what you help make very clear for somebody, saying, yes, here's this group here, and and you can actually provide them information breaking down kind of where the money's going? Obviously, any charity is going to have administrative costs. You need people to run it, otherwise it wouldn't be functioning, and those people have to make some sort of living. But it's really just how much is going to that versus going to the actual cause you're donating to.
Yeah, so one of the biggest objections people have to participating in charity is that one. Not enough money goes towards the actual cause. And the question is whether that's true or not. The other question is, do you know how to determine the answer yourself? For as long as I've been alive, for as long as I've known anything about charitable giving, there's publicly accessible information about every single registered charity in the country, which includes the disclosure of how much they spend on fundraising, as a percentage of revenue, for example. So back to the, and I can tell you why, but what and where to find that. But back to the point of, if people were more educated, if they had a better education in charitable giving, would they be able to sort of navigate and answer that question on their own? The answer is clearly yes, because as soon as I tell you how to find out that information, you can go and look at it. And so Charitable Impact, our organization, every single registered charity is on our platform, okay, whether they want to be there or not, because that's partly our mandate, but also because charities are public data in Canada. And we take the data that the government of Canada, CRA specifically, releases on all charities, and we provide some information on every single charity in the country. So you can go to our platform and see, like, oh, gee, what percentage does this charity spend on, fundraising, for example? And if that number is too high for you, then, don't give to that charity. And if that number is in line for you, then do it. And then that would be sort of the 101 level of education on that. And over time, we'd want to, help people understand more and more about the context in which it's important for some charities in particular to spend a lot of money on fundraising, particularly in a certain time, right? When you're starting up as a charity, it's no different than starting up as a business. You need to be spending a little bit more on developing your brand, and your awareness. But if you're a long-standing existing charity and you're spending 40% on fundraising administration, maybe that's too high, right? So that's a really interesting question that you ask, and it's something that Charitable Impact wants to help donors understand in as neutral a way as possible, where we're not trying to say what's good or bad, because, um, how is it possible for us to know something about every single registered charity in the country? Right. But just like a bank can't tell you what stock to buy, which one's necessarily going to go up in value. Right. So we're the same with regard to charities, but we can tell you, well, here's some of the characteristics of good charities, and we can give you education on here are the types of things that are good to know if you're going to learn some things about the charity sector. We want to put you in a position to make your own decisions so that you can take responsibility for it and have fun doing it through your life.
I think the idea of engaging with charity in a completely different way is huge. I mean, for the average person, the way that you end up engaging with charity is by somebody trying to sell you. They're asking you at the cash register, they're asking you outside the store, they're asking you by phone calls and door knocking. And to be honest with you, for the most part, that's a really annoying way for people to engage with charity. I know you're laughing, John, but I mean it's true. I mean, I've had people dog me for like 5 years, calling me every 6 months, seeing if I would give to their charity now. And I don't think that's a really good way. Yeah, they try and educate about the charity, of course, but I don't think that's a really good way to bring out the best in somebody. I belong to a couple of service clubs. I volunteer a lot of my time, and that's because I'm really engaged with the organizations that I volunteer that time to. And I really believe in them and what they do and the people that are involved in it. So I think it's huge to understand who's involved and to actually become a part of it as opposed to just money being thrown at it.
Yeah, so that's a great comment. I mean, that's why we actually, one of the reasons we believe our service is so necessary. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons why we think it's important, but um, when people give for intrinsic reasons, like reasons that really come from them, uh, they're more sustainable as donors. I mean,
Mhm.
and as spenders, by the way, in non-charitable context, and so we and the cost of getting them to give goes way down, right? If I'm not having to ask you to give, the cost of raising money from you is lower. The cost of capital in the market goes down when people sort of um, voluntarily sort of show up to be like, hey, I want a home, right? I mean, how much money is spent in Canada trying to educate people on the benefits of having a roof over your head, right? And if you had to do that, if you really had to hardcore sell people on the concept of buying a home, how much would the cost of capital increase with regard to buying a house, right? Now, the other thing I'd say is just your point about, you use the word annoying. 100%. So, nerds in the charity sector referred to that annoyance as donor fatigue. So donors become fatigued. They get tired by it, or I like your language better because it's plain. They get annoyed by the constant sort of selling of, right? And then there's a pretty obvious bridge between the constant annoyance of being sold to and the, hey, why are you spending so much money on this? Shouldn't you be saving the kids or whatever the charity's about? Um, Now, if I can, although because I'm a very donor-centered, philanthropic advisor, but if I can, just to give a shout out to charities, right? And to create some empathy for their predicament there. If you don't give unless you're asked, and they have no revenue unless you give, what should they do? Right. So they're in a really difficult predicament. Charities across Canada, well, and the United States globally, actually, are in a real big predicament when the fact is that most people only give when they're asked. If people gave on their own and then allocated money out to the charities that they thought were best, the market would become much more almost capitalistic at the level of the strongest survive, right? So, and that's where we want to see the market get to at Charitable Impact, is a place where donors come in because they voluntarily choose to participate in giving charitably, and that through the decisions they make themselves and and their social groups make, because communities are really a big part of deciding how charitable dollars get allocated. that they decide where the monies go, right? And so fundraising, it's not meant to go away. The whole sales culture of charity is not meant to go away, but it's meant to become, in our vision, a smaller percentage of the reason why people donate, right? So in other words, let me say it differently. Instead of fundraising being the reason you donate at all, instead fundraising is used to say, you know what, that's why I chose that charity over that charity, right? Does advertising in the shoe industry cause you to buy shoes at all, or does it cause you to choose Nike over Reebok?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And even that differentiating alone starts to lower the cost of capital, because we're not spending a whole bunch of money just trying to convince people to buy shoes in general. Right. Culturally, in Canada anyway, we wear shoes. Right. Culturally in Canada, we don't donate.
So saying that part right there, what's been your growth strategy to this point? Have you done much in terms of outreach fundraising, or has it been more, I mean, obviously you're on this podcast and that's part of the reason, that's part of your strategy to grow things, but what's really been your strategy? How have you, I guess, what are you doing to help change the way things are happening?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on your podcast so that I can just blatantly, sell our product. No, we don't characterize our sales approach, or as fundraising, because we don't go to you and say, "Hey, give money." We go to you and say, "Hey, do you give money? And if so, wouldn't it be great if you had a, you know, kind of like a bank-like system that worked for you?" Right? Um, so, and then people choose to give money, right? And they choose to give money through our system. So, our growth strategy has been find people who are charitable and tell them that our service exists and that it provides, a lot of value for very little, in some cases, no cost. And our next growth strategy and our mission is really to try to find Canadians who are generous but don't yet give charitably, and get them in the game, get them in the charity game. And we think that's doable more through social and community interactions than we do through taking a specific charity and selling it to you.
So let me
So
ask you.
we look for an opt-in methodology.
So let me ask you, what's your ideal customer look like? Do you take in large donations, small donations? How's that work?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So I'd say we have two types of customers with one kind of ideal. So we have high net worth customers and we have average income customers. In both cases, it's ideal if they're, bought into the concept of being charitable. Okay. If you're charitable and you do it kind of like if you exercise, without anyone forcing you to do it, like that's the kind of customer we're looking for. And then if you exercise a ton, or if you exercise a little bit, or if you exercise in fancy clothes versus not fancy clothes, we don't really care. We're here to serve you and your health, or you and your charitable giving. But it ends up being that we have two types of customers, because there are very high net worth people in Canada. And those people are often very, very charitable and come to it through different reasons, sometimes religious. But also to them, the tax incentive behind charitable giving becomes really important, right? So they've got publicly traded securities, they've sold some, they've got a bunch of capital gains tax. They learn, they're educated on the fact that giving publicly traded securities away to charity is one of the most tax effective ways. And they find us, and we're fluent in dealing with publicly traded securities, and they use us to give. So in that regard, our largest accounts are close to $100 million in value, and they
Wow.
hold non-cash assets like publicly traded securities, like real estate, like mortgages. I think you guys know something about those. You can donate cryptocurrency, but we don't let you hold it as an investment. Life insurance. Okay. And as those assets, start to create liquidity, or the donor wants liquidity so they can move money out to charities of their choice, we provide that service to them. Okay, create liquidity over here. Now you've got cash, send cash to your charity of choice. Now, the average income donor, is people who are giving $25 a month, maybe $50 a month, $1,000, a year, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year. They benefit from the same service of centralizing their account, one tax receipt, simple and organized. They always know what charities they've given to, when, how much, maybe why, if they wrote themselves a note in our platform, reminding themselves why they made an allocation. And and so we serve both customers. And like, any bank in Canada, we have a smaller number of very large donors and a very large number of average income, donors, right? Because that's just the way the population is. But what's important about Charitable Impact, unlike other organizations that do something similar to us, is we serve all customers. But by way of example, you were talking about you asked me about my kids before we started recording, and I've got two children. They're 11 and 12 years old. They don't earn a ton of money yet, right? Trying to figure that out for them, but no, they don't earn a ton of money. But my partner and I, we give them $10 each, through Charitable Impact, so that as a charitable allowance, right? And so here's these two people that don't even earn money, don't donate their own money away, who were already getting to participate in the charitable sector by giving them money that they have to give away and giving them an account structure where they're empowered to make their own decisions, right? So we're happy to serve a $10 donor as happy as we're happy to serve $1 billion donor. And we have the sophistication to do both because we have an extraordinary amount of knowledge in helping people to facilitate their philanthropic goals. Like, that's actually our specialty, you see. Our specialty is helping to facilitate your philanthropic goals. We don't specialize, just like real estate agents don't specialize in telling you what house to buy. They facilitate the process. We facilitate the process, but it's up to you to determine what house you're actually going to buy. Your decision as the donor.
I think that's a great distinction. Being of the mind to donate, like I donate every month, and have for many years. Tony Robbins is the one who said, and I did it when I was broke. He said, if you can't give a dime from a dollar, there's no way you're going to give $1 million from 10 million. And I think, especially nowadays, a lot of people look at larger corporations, more high net worth individuals. Anybody who's rich and say, yeah, that guy can afford to give. I can't. But folks don't understand the impact that even $10 a month can have from a whole lot of people. And like you said, you guys have raised $1.2 billion so far. When did you get started? What year was Charitable Impact founded?
2011.
2011. So in 13 years, you guys, that's a lot of money. And that's a lot of money for other people to benefit from. What is the process like? If I had $100 I wanted to give, how do I get started?
Well, we're a web-based organization. With real people behind it, right? So you can go to charitableimpact.com. You can click sign up, and if you have an email and remember a password, you can create an account. Yeah.
So many passwords.
2024, I really recommend a password organizer, just like I recommend a charitable giving organizer. So creating the account, it's free. It's free to start and it's free to maintain. You could then, go in and at $100, I'd probably recommend using a credit card, make a donation because you sound like someone who does make giving a regular part of your life. I would recommend making a recurring, scheduled monthly donation into your impact account. Let's say $100 a month. Okay. Now you'll have $100 in your account every single month, and you'll be getting a tax receipt immediately, centralized, issued to you, accessible through your account, right? Every time you donate. So that's part one. Then part two is, well, who do you actually want to allocate that money to? Which registered charity do you want to send it to? And you might know right away. And so if you know that you want to spend all $100 every month on these to make the math easy, these 4 charities. You can go and set a recurring allocation out to the 4 charities saying $25 each a month. Boom, 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 boom. And Charitable Impact just facilitates that for you, right? We facilitate the donation in, and we get the money to the registered charities. If, however, you are like, I know I want to send $25 to these 2 charities every month, but I'm not sure what I want to do with the other $50, then that $50 would just stack up in your account. So you'd have, $50 left over in the first month. Then a new $100 donation would come in. You'd have $150 to give away, right? So on and so forth. So it's, that's the context in which we act like a bank service just for charitable giving, right? It's a centralized account that you do all your giving through. And it's meant to make it easier at the level of just facilitating the donations so that you can spend more time on the hard part, which is, geez, like, which charities am I going to give this money to and why? And, and then there are other interesting things I want to do with my money. For example, with Charitable Impact, it allows you to send money to other people for them to give away, right? So, you've just missed it. Sorry, guys, but it was my birthday 2 days ago. Now that we're best friends, you could have been like, you know what, that John guy, I'm going to send him, $50 on his birthday for him to give away, right? So we facilitate kind of peer-to-peer giving, but with charitable dollars, right? So now, hey, I can give my kids, a charitable allowance through that, as we're talking about real estate for a second, as a real estate agent, I can say, hey, thanks for buying that house. This is great. I'm giving you $500 for you guys to allocate to a charity of choice. Thanks for using my services. So Charitable Impact's really interested in helping people to figure out, whatever mechanism is necessary to get you engaged with charitable giving. And like exercise, not everyone's going to do yoga. Not everyone's going to weightlift. So, hey, those who want to do yoga over here, those who want to weightlift over there, and if you want to start with weightlifting and shift to yoga later, that's totally fine. We're just a centralized platform for facilitating charitable giving, regardless of what causes you care about, regardless of how much money you give away, and regardless of what charities you end up choosing to benefit.
So I have an operational question. How do you guys keep the doors open and the lights on?
Yeah, so the donor like you, who you use the example, Jeff, who puts $100 of money in, gets a free account, and it's free to use and it's free to maintain. If you leave money in your account, what we don't do is we don't pay interest to you on that money. So we benefit from the float. That's a little bit highfalutin financial sort of terminology, but so the float that's in those average sort of checking like 30 accounts, we benefit from the float. We don't pay you interest, but we also don't charge you to use the account, so it's free to use. If you use what we call a charitable investment account, which is where people put larger amounts of money and they can recommend investments from there. I want it to be invested in a mortgage so I can earn 10% and have 10% more go out to charities. There we charge a fee, an asset under management, kind of like a management expense ratio, just like in the financial world. We charge a fee to use that account. So it's meant to be a simple one. If you want a free account, you don't earn any interest. If you want to earn interest, your account's not free.
No, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around that. So when you guys are holding that extra money that doesn't get distributed, is it being invested or is it just being held in an account that garners interest?
Well, we use very principally protected methodology for investing it. So we're grateful for 2020. We're the only people in the country who are happy about higher interest rates right now, because it allows us to earn 5%, risk free basically. But yeah, so we invest that money, but we don't invest that money in stocks or things where there's a risk of loss, or certainly we haven't done that to date in 10 or 13 years.
And I'd imagine being a foundation that you guys have to have a ton of publicly available records for all of that stuff.
So yeah, every registered charity has the same rules applied to it. And every registered charity has to submit an annual information return form to CRA. And a bunch of that form, not the entire thing, but a bunch of that form is made public. And by the way, you just went full circle on one of Jonathan's questions earlier about like, do charities spend too much on fundraising, et cetera? And my answer was, yeah, you can go find that out for yourself if you know how, right? And that's how, right? So we submit information just along with every other registered charity. A bunch of that charity information is made public. You just have to know how to find it. So charities are regulated in Canada. They're regulated by the Canada Revenue Agency, and um, you know, they've got a tough job, but they do a pretty good job.
Do we not say that word on here? I don't want them looking at us.
Yeah,
No,
they're scary. They're scary.
I think it's extremely important for people to understand that you having deposits that you're actually putting out into investments to earn the interest on that to keep the doors open, that's just smart. Because the biggest problem with most charities is they're run by people who really care and really want to give, but they're run like charities, not businesses. So, I mean, high five. If you were closer to Vancouver, I'd be like, you know what? That's smart. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks. And you know what? There's another reason we do it. Well, so we agree that it's smart, and we agree that business methodology is important. I mean, charities are businesses, by the way. They are corporations at law. They're just corporations that have no share capital, which means you can't own them. But anyway, so corporations are businesses. The question is, are businesses run as businesses and are charities run as businesses? It is important to run a charity like a business as long as you remember that you're there to serve your beneficiary, right? But here's the other reason we do it. It's a bit more sort of surface level, but because we know charity literacy in Canada, like the amount Canadians really do know or appreciate about the structures and architecture of charity is low. We know from experience in the charity sector that Canadians react adversely. They react negatively towards, charities spending money on anything other than, saving the dogs and the cats or saving the children, whatever they're there to save. And so when we started Charitable Impact, we actually used to charge people, a percent, 1%. And we moved away from that because if you're giving away $10 million, that was a huge fee. And if you're giving away $100, people would kind of go, well, charity shouldn't be doing that, or why would I pay in order to have the facilitation to give away money more, better and more easily? Now, I think there's a good answer to that, but instead of fighting that, we sought out a business model that allowed, kind of us to have a business model while allowing the regular donor to have a free charitable experience. So they couldn't at least complain to us about charging them too much money.
No, I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so why? Because we don't want anyone to have any reasons not to be charitable. Like we're trying to, this sales objection, so again, this is sort of business language, but like sales objections, and like if you're in the sales world, you have to learn how to deal with objections, right? We want to reduce the amount of objections people have to be charitable, all the way down to one, which is a question that you ask yourself: are you charitable? And if you answer that no, then you certainly don't need Charitable Impact. But if you answer that yes, then you should look at Charitable Impact because we're an excellent service for you if you're charitable. But if you answer that question yes, and then there's a follow-on question like, hey, do you give any of your time away? Do you give any of your money away? And the answer to that is no, then we would revert you back to question one, which is, are you charitable? Because if you're charitable, you got to do something about it. I loved your quote from Tony Robbins before, and he's bang on correct, by the way. It's 100% my experience. People who get, oh, when I'm rich, I'll give. Like that's total garbage because they never end up doing it. The people who are the best donors when they get rich are the people who started giving well before they got rich. And that is true 98 out of 100 times. I was wrong before. There are exceptions. There's 2% exceptions of people who get rich and then start giving their money.
I couldn't agree more, though. Even for those folks who say they don't have money, you do have time. If you don't have money, you have time. You have one or the other or both, depending on what you do. Man, I think it's extremely important because no matter where you're at in the spectrum of wealth, you have more than other people. And the more you give, the more you get back. Even if you just think about that basic feeling of feeling good, that's great. When you give a gift at Christmas, like that's the best feeling ever. When you thought about a gift and you give it to somebody and they really wanted that gift, well, there's other people who really need that gift. And if you can bring that into your life as a practice, it's enlightening. And I think that people focusing just on money as something they can give is not nearly as important as thinking about giving on the whole. If you don't have money, give time. If you don't have time, then you've got to have some money you can give, and give that dime from a dollar, because it's important, because it flows back. It's a reciprocal thing. The universe is weird. There's laws that I don't understand, but it's absolutely true. The law of reciprocity is one of those absolutely steadfast rules in the universe.
I agree
John,
with you. I agree with you.
Is there a message you'd like to leave folks with? Anything that you really want to convey as a message for people in educating themselves in charity and giving as a general rule?
Well, maybe just repeat what I said, and it's not by the way, it's not meant to be judgmental, right? It's meant to be you're meant to be judgmental of yourself on this question. So my message to people listening would be to ask themselves, are they charitable? Like, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if you're charitable. And if the answer is no, maybe say, well, do you want to be? Right. And if the answer is yes, then figure out what you can do. And that's where charitable impact's really useful to you. Because if you are charitable, if you want to be charitable, we're here to serve you. We're not here to sell you on specific charities to give to. We're here to serve you, to help you navigate the charitable sector, regardless of how much experience you have with it. If you got no experience, it's fine. Reach out. We're here to help. If you've got tons of experience and you know everything you want to do and you just want to use us as a facilitator, no problem also. So I think what's really important is for people to ask themselves that question if they're charitable. And if they say yes, then make sure you're actually doing something. So it's not just like, well, I'm charitable in my mind, but I don't actually do it. Right. And when you start doing it, that's where charitable impact's really useful to you. We're here to help you create the change you want to see in the world. Right. It's your giving, your way, just with our support. I'm excited about Charitable Impact because helping donors discover and onboard into this world where they actually do, as you just said, Jeff, get something in return when they give, these laws of reciprocity. It's really fun. It's really fun to watch. It's really fun to be a part of that. We find meaning in helping other people find meaning in their own, in this own slice of life, that I want more and more people to make part of their lifestyle, to make charitable giving a part of their lifestyle.
That's huge. How do people find you?
Well, we're at charitableimpact.com. We're on the internets. You can find us in social media at We Are Charitable. We're an online tool that you can sign up for without talking to anyone. But we also have a team of really bright, engaged people who are there to help. And so give us a call, send us an email. We're here to support. We're here to support your journey in charitable giving.
Amazing, John. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Anything you want to wrap up with?
Hey, John, been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I know that you and Jeff have spoken way more than I have, but I've learned a ton on here. Learned a lot about really. Let me just say the way you guys are working. Took away sort of the objections I have, which was that exact one. If I give to you guys, you're effectively taking a slice off the pie that I've got, but you're not doing that. So that structure I love. So phenomenal. Great work. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me. You guys are an engaging group.
Thanks, John. We really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be sure to include your link in all of the posts that we do after this. I think you guys are doing great work. Please keep doing what you're doing. If you need any help in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. If you have more questions about what Jonathan and I do, you can always check out mortgageplan.com or guidetothegrind.com. And we appreciate you getting all the way to the end. Please give us a like, subscribe, comment, all those things, shares, all those things really help us get out there. John Bromley, again, thank you very much. Jonathan Tilger, thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and have a fantastic day.